Hi, I'm Frank Sullivan. Welcome to Digital Craftsmen. This is
Michael?
Hello, Michael. Today, we are going to be talking about
Malware.
malware. Malware is pretty nasty stuff. Once it gets into your network or onto your machines, it's kind of difficult to get rid of. So, Michael, what the heck is malware?
Before I go into not too much detail about the technicalities behind it, let me say that malware is another strategy of attackers to come into possession of private confidential information, your username or password, things like that. Last time we talked about social engineering, about phishing, things like that, to make people believe to voluntarily give up that information because they think the one who requests it is valid, is authentic. Malware is a different strategy to get to the same information by trying to infect your computer, trying to put in software onto your laptop, into your network, that gains access to that information without you even knowing it, without trying to phish on you. It's a technical approach rather than a social approach. And it's pieces of software, keyloggers, meaning software that is reading what you type on your keyboard. Software that's wiretapping, meaning that it's listening in on the network traffic from your laptop, from your computer, from your server, that tries to listen in and identify situations where users type in usernames and passwords, record that, send it out to what's typically called a controller server, somewhere on the internet that's otherwise unidentifiable, and that one collects from many different sites where people have where they have successfully installed that malware to collect that information for broad attack. The intent behind malware or behind phishing for information using malware is more frequently less towards individual malintent, towards you as an individual, but more towards taking control of our servers, to use them in distributed denial of service attacks against another victim, or as something to crack Bitcoin mining, digital currencies, things like that, where you need a lot of computational power, network server power, to calculate certain mathematical functions, to gain some other financial access to some services, or actually making money with that.
At its simplest level, malware is malicious code that once it's on your machine, once it's infected your system or your server, can take control of your service, or depending on the kind of program, for example, ransomware is a bit of malware that locks you out of your computer and you typically have to pay a hacker to get your data back. Or, like you said, listeners, keyloggers, things that are designed to snoop on you, or perhaps not even something targeting you as an individual, not specifically designed to hurt you, but designed to take control of your machine for nefarious purposes, like sending lots of
spam emails,
DDoS attacks, or
things like that. So you are basically talking in biological terms. You are the host, and they are just piggybacking on you, stealing your resources without actually harming you. Okay. That's the least invasive and the least damaging version of malware. Nonetheless, it costs you resources.
Could malware also be described as a computer virus?
Viruses are one type of malware. Worms. I didn't want to go too much into details because it's getting very quickly into very heated debates. But yes, we had keyloggers, we had wiretappers, viruses, ransomware. I would actually say virus is another umbrella term because it describes more how malware is distributed once it's gotten hold of a business or a corporate network.
I think we're generally...
Worms are the same way of delivering or infecting your machines, whereas keyloggers, phishers, ransomware, and these more describe the intent of the malware.
So what happens once your terminal, your computer, your server has been infected with malware. How do you know it's happened? What can you do about it?
What happens, or how do you know about it happens? The most stealthy and sneaky malware makes sure that you don't notice, because then it can reside there for a very long time. So it's not invasive in the sense that it disrupts your work. The most disruptive of them all is obviously ransomware that encrypts your hardware, says, pay me $1 million, otherwise you will never see your data again. That is very disruptive. The other ones are that typically use you as their host, that collects information to use on top of you without disrupting you, because they want to have a long-term use out of you. So it depends on really what malware you actually got in your system. There are ways typically when you are infected with something like that, you need to immediately go to IT support.
Mm-hmm.
Almost immediately stop any internet activity from it spreading any further. That means stopping your internet connection, your Wi-Fi connection, turn off your Wi-Fi antenna, rip out any network cables, if need be, close the lid of your laptop, turn off your machine and tell IT support I have a problem. They are usually good with helping you with that. There are, if you like, remedy software that actually knows the anatomy of the malware and can remove it.
Mm-hmm.
In some cases, when it's ransomware, then it's very difficult, next to impossible to do these kind of things, but it is possible. Preventing things like that can only be done by things to be suspicious of anything that is coming from an unknown source, as usual.
Usually it's a download.
Yes.
An email that tricks you into downloading a file. It could be
That-
an image
that
or a
is-
PDF file.
Exactly, that's something, it's drive-by infections, if you heard that term, is something that does not require your interaction by downloading an email and saving an attachment or clicking a link in it. That's active infection. Passive infection, drive-by infection, means that by simply opening up an email that has images in there, or by going to a website with images or with advertisements, if you go into free websites with lots of advertisements, they are exploiting vulnerabilities in how your computer processes these images and these attachments and these advertisements, and through that are able to install the malware.
Trying to give some practical examples here, and this is intended to spark a little bit of debate, but I would say that the majority of malware it's obviously used for nefarious purposes, but it doesn't immediately cause pain to the individual user. It's typically an interruption to the business, or something that costs the business or shuts down a revenue generative activity, because your hosting provider or your ISP will have to isolate you, and if you go through their terms and conditions, they will say that you are responsible for malware removal. But how many malware removal specialists would you have within a small or medium-sized company? Probably none. So
no, you don't.
So it's the downtime that comes from being shut off by the host, and you spend hours. I mean, we've all been in the situation where you spend hours back and forth trying to get your service turned back on. If you don't do a malware scan or remove all of the infected files, then you will remain cut off. Let's say that your business is dependent on that particular web application, or that, like an e-commerce website, there's nothing you can do. The most important thing to do is to have backups and a business continuity plan, that you have strong password controls, that you have well-educated and cyber-aware users within your organization who are suspicious of downloads, and also having network policies and scanning that prevent.
Yes, that's
access.
Network intrusion detection, that is scanning incoming traffic on demand directly for malware, but also on your laptop. I think these days it's absolutely inevitable that everyone has to have a virus scanner on the laptop.
And run it regularly.
Run it regularly,
Once a
basically.
week.
Well, actually, there are different modes to operating. Typically, modern virus scanners on your laptop scan the network traffic that comes in and out of your laptop, as opposed to corporate-wide network scannings.
Secure the endpoint.
Yes, secure the endpoint, update regularly, update any piece of software on your laptop through trusted channels. Typically in corporate environments, that's through centralized IT management and procurement on Windows laptops. Macs and Linux-based machines are slightly different with that, but there's solutions for that as well. Regularly update, in particular and specifically, your virus scanner, and let it run a full laptop scan, everything that's on the hard drive or the solid-state drive, at least once a week.
Okay, so we've talked about what malware is, the forms in which it's distributed, and what some of the effects are. Some of it is to take over the machine or the function of the machine. Some of it is to directly get into your network and compromise your data. Obviously, we know that prevention is better than a cure, and that's something that we can help you with. But what happens if one of our customers is under attack? Or what happens if somebody is out there, they're having an attack right now? What's the first thing that they should do?
Again, that depends on the attack. I presume you're talking about the distributed denial of service attack.
Yes, for example.
That goes away a bit from the topic of malware, but that's fine. If your website experiences a distributed denial of service attack, which means your website is not reachable anymore, you should immediately contact your hosting provider, because they usually have means of immediately mitigating that by improving bandwidth. Services like Cloudflare come to mind. Usually either your provider has their own direct solution for that, if they have lots of data centers through which they can spread it, or have a service agreement with Cloudflare or other services similar to that, that allows them to deploy a solution like that to your services. But the first line of defense is, once you know it, talk to your hoster.
Talk to your hoster. There you have it. Thank you very much. We'll see you next week.